This laptop's display is ridiculous. Its performance is awesome, and its battery life was surprising, but there were some things that made us want to throw it off the tallest building we could find. Is the 2024 ROG Strix G16 worth fighting those annoyances for? Well, we're gonna find out right here, right now on Robeytech. Well, we're back with another Robeytech Ultimate Laptop review, and this time, it's the ROG Strix G16 laptop from ASUS that's getting the full workover. And I've gotta tell you, there are some things that we love about it, some things that annoyed the crap out of us, and some things that could either come off as gimmicky or could save your bacon. By the end of this review, you should have all of the information that you need to know if you're considering the G16 as your next laptop. In case you couldn't tell by the ROG design, the G16 is a premium gaming laptop designed for the gamer on the go, because we all know that gamers need an RGB halo wherever they go. It's practically science at this point. For clarity, ASUS has used the G16 name before, so just be aware that we're talking about the 2024 model here, which has a starting price of $1799. Like most laptops, it comes in multiple configurations, but this model that we're reviewing here has a retail price of $2299.99. Now, as far as dimensions go, the G16 measures in at 13.94 inches or 354 millimeters wide, 10.93 inches or 278 millimeters deep, and 0.98 inches or 24.9 millimeters tall, and it weighs 5.51 pounds or 2.5 kilograms. In other words, the G16 is pretty typical in size and weight for a 16-inch laptop. And when I say typical, I mean it's about as hefty as an Alienware M16 at 5.75 pounds or 2.61 kilograms, or the MSI Vector 16 at 5.95 pounds or 2.7 kilograms. Laptops you could absolutely check out at your local Best Buy if you wanted to make the comparison for yourself. We want you to think, you know, is this heavy? You could head over to a Micro Center, a Best Buy, a Fry's, if those are even around, pick it up and kind of decide, is it too heavy or not for you? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. What's inside? Patience, guys, we're getting there. At its heart, the ROG Strix G16 looks to only have one option for CPU, and that's the Intel Core i9-14900HX processor, which has 8P or performance cores and 16E or efficiency cores for a total of 24 cores. Now, the 14900HX has a maximum boost frequency of 5.8 gigahertz with a maximum TDP of 65 watts in the G16. For comparison, on the desktop side, that's the same 65 watts that would be in the Core i7-14700 non-K. Now, I've got to say, this is really cool for ASUS to actually have provided this information here, since Intel lets laptop manufacturers decide what CPU power they're actually going to pump through their mobile CPUs. For context, the minimum recommended TDP from Intel on this chip is 45 watts, so ASUS is pushing it to perform, which is absolutely cool and something that they love to do with their particular laptops. That's ASUS specifically, not necessarily everybody. Now, for the GPU, unlike what they did for the CPU, ASUS paired the 14th gen Core i9 with a few different options from NVIDIA's 40 series GPU family. You've got an RTX 4060 mobile, an RTX 4070 mobile, and an RTX 4080 mobile. The model that we're testing out right now is the 4070 version, and we've basically, just for a little bit of context, we've seen the 4070 mobile versions perform very similar to the desktop 30 series in terms of performance. So just to give you like a, what is it called? A finger in the wind? Is that what? Yeah, a finger in the wind. Now, the mobile 4070 we just mentioned for this particular model is driving the G16's 16-inch QHD Plus 1600p display. This thing has a refresh rate of 240 Hz and a color gamut that covers 100% of the DCI-P3 color spectrum. This is an IPS level panel with a max display brightness of 500 nits, a 3 millisecond response time, and it's a G-Sync display as well. I gotta pause here for a second because specs are one thing, but seeing this in person and gaming on it is a different animal. This screen is beautiful, especially for an IPS display. While it's no OLED, it still has bright, crisp colors that make gaming absolutely incredible. And that's not just me hyping it up. That's Damien, who used this laptop for a very long time, raving about it like he just ate a 5-pound bag of sugar. That's not a pretty sight, like this laptop displays this. I mean, he just had sugar everywhere. They almost called the Taiwanese cops. It was pretty ridiculous. Now, ASUS calls this their ROG Nebula display, not to be confused with the blue robot ninja assassin from Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a great movie, by the way. Though if you are worried about blue light assassins attacking your eyeballs, this actual ASUS Nebula display reduces blue light before it leaves the screen. Now, this isn't just ASUS saying, we absolutely do this. This actually has been vetted by TÜV Rheinland, which is an independent safety and product testing group, which says, yes, this is actually certified to reduce those blue light assassins. All that to say that this display is absolutely gorgeous. I wish we had a better way to show this on camera. Luckily, we use some really high-end cameras, so maybe it's coming through, maybe not. Now, moving back to the review itself, the G16 comes with 1 terabyte of NVMe SSD storage. There is an additional PCI Gen 4 expansion slot in case you want to add another NVMe drive. Honestly, it's a worthwhile investment if you plan to use a laptop like this long term. And plus, I mean, honestly, 4 terabyte and 2 terabyte NVMe drives are so cheap. Now hold that thought. Now, as for system memory, our model of the G16 came with 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM running at 5600 megatransfer. Now, this is something to pay attention to because we've seen other models of the G16 on the market that only have 16 gigabytes. Fortunately, both the RAM and the NVMe slots are user accessible and upgradable, which is great news if you ended up with the 16 gigabyte version or you needed more storage space. The big question is, how difficult is it? On a difficulty scale where the MSI Titan is literally just a handful of screws and you're inside, to the Lenovo Yoga Book, which I swear requires at least a dozen doctorate level engineering degrees and a set of tools that haven't been invented yet, I'd say the G16 is closer to the Titan side on the scales. You will need a plastic pick. You can use a guitar pick, but the iFixit ones are actually really nice, a small Phillips head screwdriver, and a little bit of patience to get inside the G16. But once you're in, access to those components is actually a breeze and very, very easy to upgrade. Now, moving on to external connectivity, the ASUS ROG Strix G16 has a good amount of it, including a whole list that we're gonna pop up right here on the screen, but I'm gonna give you a couple highlights. It has 2 USB Type-A ports, 1 Type-C port, HDMI, Thunderbolt 4, which also includes DisplayPort out, a full-sized Ethernet port, which we love to see, Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth, and more. Now, quick note here, the USB Type-C port also supports DisplayPort with G-Sync and power delivery. Since we're talking about interfaces, let's go ahead and talk about the keyboard on the G16. The G16 has a full-size keyboard with per key RGB lighting controlled via ASUS's ROSync software, or you can use Windows dynamic lighting settings. You can also use ASUS Armoury Crate software to modify keys in case you need to create hotkeys or macros, etc. for your most used applications or games. Overall, the keyboard has a nice feel to it, but we wouldn't necessarily say it's better or worse than any other laptop keyboards we've actually used recently. The keys are responsive, and some of the extra function keys that ASUS added are actually super nice. But I've got to say, the placement of some keys to get that full-size title just kind of made me angry. And Damien too. Now put this kettle on the back burner for now because I'm gonna pour some tea on it a little bit later. We'll just let it simmer for a bit while we continue this review. Now let's just move south to the touchpad. This thing has a hidden secret. And by hidden, I mean we accidentally turned it on and couldn't figure out how to shut the stupid thing off. It's not stupid, but it was annoying at the time. Now, for all of you guys who wish that a gaming laptop like this would have like a 10 keypad so you would have an excuse to make this your work laptop, if you hold your finger down in the upper right-hand corner of the touchpad, bam, you got a 10-key keypad. Now, little did we know at first that when you activate the hidden 10 keypad, the G16 disables the trackpad to do it. I know it's common sense, but no trackpad means no cursor control for clicking on things. And can I just say that we had a moment of panic because we had to grab a USB mousepad so we could look up what the heck we just did and how to make it stop. So does this really work as a 10-key replacement? Hardly. Will it work in a pinch? Yes, but you're gonna hate yourself if you think this will work as your daily driver. Here's looking at you, you magical little accountants you. Looks like your gamer laptop / work laptop princess is actually in another castle. Okay, wrapping up the specs here, the G16 has a 90 watt-hour battery, which isn't the biggest battery we've seen in a laptop, but it's close to the ceiling for a laptop battery that you can actually fly with. As for the power brick, the G16 has a 280 watt power brick that is slightly smaller than 2 banana spooning. To be clear, that means it's a little over 3 inches wide, it's an inch thick, and about 7 inches long, and it weighs about 1.5 pounds. So it's a little bit hefty. comparatively, it's a little thicker height-wise, but slimmer on the sides than the power brick for like the Lenovo Legion Slim 7i, but definitely not the monstrosity of the Alienware M18. That thing is just, it's a defense mechanism. Okay, now that we've talked about all of the insides, let's look at how the 2024 ASUS ROG Strix G16 handled our gaming benchmarks. Quick note here, when we do our laptop reviews, we always test at each laptop's native display resolution with the highest in-game settings available. But we adjust to maximize frame rates in competitive titles because that's what you actually absolutely want to know. Like, how fast can I get this to go in Fortnite, Call of Duty, etc. In the case of the G16, we're testing at 1600p or QHD+. It's like 1440p, but it has some bonus real estate, so a little bit harder to push for that GPU. Now, starting with Cyberpunk 2077, running at ray tracing ultra with DLSS set to auto and frame generation on, the G16 got an average frame rate of 75.26 frames per second. That is some beautiful Cyberpunk, mind you. In Forza Horizon 5, at extreme settings with DLSS set to auto and frame generation on, the G16 gave us an average of 113 frames per second. So great for racing, we're good there. Though, I don't know, it'd be kind of weird to throw this on like a racing setup, but I don't know, there's people out there, I've seen it at lands. Now in Modern Warfare 3, at extreme settings with DLSS set to balance and with frame generation on, the G16 averaged 127 frames per second. So there's your single player campaign. Don't worry, we're not talking about frame generation when you're playing multiplayer. In Shadow the Tomb Raider, the G16 ran at an average of 156 frames per second with DLSS set to balance and graphics preset set to the highest. In Tiny Tina's Wonderland, with graphics set to badass and FSR 2.0 set to balance, we saw averages of 112.35 frames per second. That's some awesome single player experiences. Let's talk about competitive titles. Let's start with Apex Legends, visuals set to low, basically maximizing competitive. We got an average frame rate of 221. Back to Modern Warfare 3, we dropped down to low settings, keeping everything basically set for competitive. We basically run an average of 259 frames per second. Finally, Fortnite, again, low settings, competitive, running it to getting it as fast as possible, 271 frames per second. Now again, your competitive settings may change. You got to play around with them to kind of find your mix of what that is, but these are very impressive for this particular laptop. Overall, the G16 did very well in our gaming tests thanks to that 14900HX and that RTX 4070 mobile, plus a 1600p display versus 4K or something ridiculous. Honestly, it's just a great hardware package altogether. Now, we also ran battery tests on the G16, which is the same that we run on all of our laptop reviews. On average, we got over 6 hours of battery life, which is pretty amazing for what's inside of this laptop. For clarity, the benchmark that we use for battery testing is actually UL Procion's Office Productivity Battery Life Test. This application tests battery life by mimicking what you would do in a productivity case. You know how we're talking about taking this to work? Well, you could, because it was opening Office applications, importing and exporting files, exporting videos of PowerPoint presentations, backing up folders, and more. So we weren't just watching Netflix, like we weren't just watching Godzilla -1 for 6 hours. Really, honestly, it runs it through a lot of productivity like you would in an office, and then when the battery dies, that's when we get our number. With that in mind, I've got to be honest, we didn't expect 6 hours of gaming performance on battery. It's highly unlikely that you'd get the same results if you were going to just game on this. But that being said, luckily we had Damien out in the world of Taipei, traveling all over the world, and he basically actually was able to play an hour and a half worth of Destiny 2 campaign missions in the Taipei airport on his way back from Computex, and that was an hour and a half of pushing the game at max settings. Even still, when he was all done, he still had 50% of battery life. So it's a data point. I mean, we could probably run that. It's not an average, but again, very impressive to see something like that with still playing an hour and a half and having 50% of some Destiny 2. Honestly, that's not bad at all when compared to what we've seen for battery life out of like currently available handhelds. It kind of makes the G16 look like a viable option for some portable gaming. Now, since we talked about gaming performance, we do have to look at thermal performance as well. Now, before we get into numbers, let's get to know a little bit more about how the 2024 version of the G16 keeps itself cool. Because this series of laptops has had a bit of a glow up, the newly designed chassis supports a full-width heatsink with a network of 7 heat pipes and 3 fans. Air intake happens on the bottom of the system and it exhausts out of the laptop's side and rear. The G16 is also using that beautiful Thermal Grizzly Conductinaut Extreme Liquid Metal Thermal Compound for the CPU, something that ASUS is very proud of. Now on the 4080 models, they're using it on the GPU also. All right, with all that in mind, remember this is the 4070, so no liquid metal. Let's look at the performance. At idle, the ASUS ROG Strix G16 kept its 14900HX processor at a resting average of 37 degrees Celsius, with the RTX 4070 resting at 30 degrees Celsius. Not bad for idle temps. Now under full CPU load, the G16 ran an average temperature of 92 degrees Celsius on the CPU and 50 degrees on the GPU. And finally, in our gaming benchmarks, the ASUS ROG Strix G16 held the Core i9-14900HX at an average of 74 degrees, while the 4070 averaged 65. With that in mind, how was the G16 acoustically? Well, when we looked at the numbers, we recorded the G16 under load, and it hit around 64.8 decibels. In other words, the fans are going to be noticeable when they ramp up, but they're not going to be annoying. For comparison, the decibel level lands the G16 somewhere between a normal conversation or chilled background music. Honestly, the G16 does a really good job of staying quiet and even quieter in silent mode. More on the modes here in a second. Now we've given you a lot of information and some data, but now let's talk about our experience with the ROG Strix G16. Now the first thing you need to know about the G16 is that the moment you boot this thing up, you're like immediately met with the sounds of like swords slicing through the air of the ROG logo as it appears. You can actually toggle this setting off in the BIOS if you want to leave the boot chimes to like somebody like Apple. I actually think it's pretty cool, but I don't know if you're one of those late night people in bed and you're like shing and you wake up your wife, then she could shing you right in half. Once we had this thing up and running, it was really a dream to use. I'm not kidding, the display, it is gorgeous. Again, it's not an OLED display, but the colors are nice and crisp. And when you combine that with the 240 hertz refresh rate, it really kept like games like Destiny 2, Helldivers 2, which is on here, etc. It really kept it super smooth. And I have to say, this is just something about ASUS laptops in general. The sound is nuts. Sometimes with laptop speakers, the audio quality can be lacking, but the G16 really delivers an immersive soundscape thanks to Dolby Atmos. I've got to say, laptop speakers have really come a long way. What impressed us is that the fans were also super quiet. And when I say quiet, I mean that while we were writing the script for this video, we had to kind of step back and think whether or not we actually heard the fans kick in during a gaming. To be clear, they're not noiseless fans, but the sound they made just wasn't distracting and it didn't like essentially overpower the speakers. That being said, you can also run the G16 in 4 different power modes and thermal modes that can be modified within ASUS Armoury Crate software. You got manual, silent, performance, and turbo. Silent mode will keep the G16 silent by lowering the CPU power and keeping the discrete GPU in reserve for more graphic-intensive tasks, while it's also intelligently balancing battery life, fan acoustics, and performance. Turbo mode increases the power to both the GPU and the CPU, basically for your high-performance gaming. This mode is only available when the G16 is plugged into an outlet, which makes sense. And performance mode, it's like you're striking the balance of power with acoustics, giving users just enough juice without pushing your system too far or making it too loud. And manual mode, which is like it says, it basically allows you, the user, to define targets for performance, power, and acoustic. For us, both the performance and silent modes were like our morning cup of coffee, consistent go-tos. Just be aware that on battery power, the G16 definitely locks down GPU performance in silent mode. We did notice noticeable lower frame rates, but it's not unplayable. I'm just talking about 60 frames per second in Destiny 2 versus the 140 plus we saw when we were connected to power. Again, not unplayable, but again, noticeable if you're trying to get like the most power out of the battery while gaming. Now, since we're talking about it, there are some pros and cons to using Armoury Crate. On one hand, Armoury Crate is ASUS's one-stop shop for system updates, tweaks, RGB control, and system-wide management. But on the other hand, it's Armoury Crate. and if you've used it, you kind of know what I mean. And it can chew up some system resources. We know it's doing a lot to manage the G16, but the question is at what cost? There's a lot inside of Armoury Crate, and the question is, I really wish they could create like a light version that just did the minimum stuff, so that way you weren't seeing so much kind of chewed up. But it's kind of up to you. Did it bother us? Did we see hits to performance? When we really think about it, it wasn't something that like took away from the laptop, but it's absolutely worth mentioning because I know a lot of people have the feels when it comes to what Armoury Crate necessarily means. Now let's move on to the keyboard, which is nice. It took us a little bit of time to get used to, but listen, there are trade-offs in laptops in general when you have a full-size keyboard. Sometimes things get shifted around to kind of make everything fit. And that's exactly what happened to this right here, the right shift key. Now to get a full-size keypad, which is right here, ASUS shortened the right shift key and put it right up against that arrow. For writers who are used to a quick tap of a button suddenly find themselves typing on the line above, it's annoying. And to be clear, this isn't the only laptop that does it. There's two ways that people have done this. There's two trains of thought. There's either smaller arrow keys or bigger shift key. We're kind of fans of the bigger shift key, smaller arrow keys, but again, it's up to the laptop manufacturers. Now, if you depend on your laptop to do any heavy writing, productivity, emailing, something like that, this is something you're gonna need to be aware of if you really have to ask yourself if the trade-off is worth it to you. The awkwardness does get solved over the time as you get used to it, but it's definitely took its toll when we were learning the layout. And here's the deal, if you switch a lot between desktop full-size computers and then to laptops, you're gonna have to find yourself retraining yourself quite a bit. Now finally, the G16's touchpad is silky smooth and responsive, but we did find that we had to turn the sensitivity down ever so slightly from the out-of-the-box setting. Now this sensitive touchpad plus the arrow key situation we just mentioned, when Damien was using this and he was having to do a lot of work on this thing, he actually ended up accidentally deleting well-crafted dad jokes, which that's a crime against humanity. You should have seen how proud he was of them and just the light that drained from his eyes the moment that they were gone. He couldn't even remember them. I mean, they're just in the ether now. Hopefully they'll hit one of you someday when your jokes become apparent. As we wrap this up, we got to give our closing thoughts on the ASUS ROG Strix G16. Overall, this is an exceptionally performant and surprisingly quiet laptop. The gaming experiences we had on it, they were fantastic. And if that's what you want to get the ROG Strix G16 for, there is nothing that we would say would block you from doing that. However, as a remote work laptop, we had some strong opinions, and that's gonna be up to you. I mean, you gotta determine if the shift key thing, in terms of a placement, is gonna be something you're gonna be able to get over. And maybe if you have a chance to go try out some of those at a local store, you should absolutely go do it. With all of that now in mind, and we've given you a lot of information, the big question, would we recommend the G16? Honestly, the answer really hinges on your needs. From a gamer perspective, the G16 is a top-notch mobile gaming platform. The combination of the 14900HX, the RTX 4070 with the QHD Plus Nebula display is just incredible. It's a very, very well thought out package. At this resolution, these parts are really working to create an incredible gaming experience, and that's not just conjecture. When we got back from Computex, Damien kept using the G16 for gaming until he caught his last flight home. So on the gaming front, the G16 gets a strong recommendation, and with this hardware combination, this is something that's actually gonna last quite a while. However, from a writer's or productivity standpoint, let's just say Damien was more than eager to get back to his Lenovo Legion Slim 7i, which you can actually see us talk about right here. And both he and I have actually personally purchased that laptop. Now, the sensitive touchpad on the G16 combined with the shortened shift key upset him a lot. He told me about it like 3 times. It's like, we get it, man. You don't like it.
I said it 4 times!
But joking aside, this brings up a valid concern for anyone who plans to do a significant amount of work or writing on this laptop. You can take time to adjust to it, but be prepared that the keyboard will get in the way of your creative flow from time to time, but that is something that you could potentially get over. We're not telling you it's bad or good, we're just making you aware of an issue. So as a work or writer's laptop, we've had better experiences. We definitely are one who like the smaller arrow pads. I mean, honestly, there's not a lot of people who use full arrow keys when you're using WASD to game, but that's up to you. And finally, if you travel a lot, the G16 is neither thin nor light. It's portable and it weighs slightly less than comparative gaming laptops, but you gotta be honest with yourself. How much are you gonna need to cart this thing around in your backpack? The first hour might be fine, but over time, you're gonna start looking like The Rock, because the G16 does not get any lighter. Now, if you need a laptop for travel, our recommendation is this. If you do light traveling, like you're going back and forth to the office, maybe you're getting on a plane, throwing it up top, and then taking off and walking to a gate, you're going to a classroom, a coffee shop, honestly, the G16 is probably fine. However, if you travel a lot for work or you go to conferences where you need a laptop at the ready and you're lugging it around like a show floor, etc., your back and shoulders are not going to be happy with you. Now, if you're that second person, you need a thinner and lighter laptop, but want to stick with the ASUS ROG branding, the Zephyrus G16 is worth checking out. While not exactly an apples to apples comparison, it's about 1.5 pounds lighter. We did get to spend some time with a Meteor Lake equipped Zephyrus, and it was so good, it made me watch Top Gun again because of just how good the speakers and the screen were. OLED, it was awesome. Interpret this however you will, but the point is, it was a great media experience. So wrapping it all up, the ROG Strix G16 is a killer laptop that is well worth considering if that's your primary use for it. While we had issues with parts of the keyboard layout, there is a lot to love about the G16. Are there cheaper gaming laptops on the market? Sure. But ASUS makes a compelling case for the G16 with a combination of performant CPU, range of GPU, that killer 240Hz Nebula display, as well as the resolution. Now, if you pick this laptop for yourself, you're really not gonna be sorry unless you hate short and shift keys. Well, those are our impressions of the ASUS ROG Strix G16 laptop. But we wanna know what you think. Was there something about this laptop that stood out to you? What do you think of the design? What do you think of the screen? And where are you at on short and shift keys, etc.? Let us know all that down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, go ahead and slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you get a notification each and every time we post videos like this right here on Robeytech. Also, if you have questions about laptops or you want to continue the conversation, head over to our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. Amazing place to have conversations with other like-minded PC enthusiasts who love to talk about tech and may actually help you make an informed purchase decision. And you know what? You might just make a friend. Also, feel free to follow us on all the other socials at Robeytech absolutely everywhere. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.